Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for joining for today evening Gita Essence program. Sorry for the delay. We'll begin right away. Hare Krishna, Tarunji, Hare Krishna. So let me share my screen. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatadi Shatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, we welcome you all for joining us for today's evening program. We have been discussing the course titled as Gita Essence, overview of Bhagavad Gita, and is based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So today we'll be discussing chapter 10. Before we get into the subject matter of chapter 10, we'll do a quick recap of what we discussed in chapter 9. Chapter 9, titled as The Most Confidential Knowledge. There's a background noise. Yeah. It's titled as The Most Confidential Knowledge. So like last time when we started this chapter, I gave an analogy. Just like a pearl which is hidden with a shell, and just like a king is surrounded by his entourage, similarly, the essence of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Shri Krishna revealed in the middle of the conversation, which is the 9th chapter. And in that also, the essence, the key message of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Shri Krishna gave in the last verse of chapter 9. So here in this chapter, the confidential knowledge, Lord Shri Krishna reveals the king of all knowledge, Rajaguhyam, Rajavidya Rajaguhyam, Pavitram Idamam Uttama, which Lord Shri Krishna defines to be the secret of all secrets, pure devotional service. When we were talking about this confidential knowledge, we also described the levels of confidential knowledge, where Srila Prabhupada writes in the very first or the second purport of this chapter 9. Arjuna, when he heard about the glories of this confidential knowledge, when he heard about how Lord Shri Krishna is a cause of all causes, Then Arjuna asked, my dear Lord, why people don't accept you if you are the source of everything? And then Lord Shri Krishna speaks that the fools, they deride me, considering me to be humans or human being like them. And then Arjuna asked, my dear Lord, who are they who accepts you? And then Lord Shri Krishna said, those who accept me are called as Mahatma, not otherwise. It's not that we give somebody a name of Mahatma, he becomes Mahatma. The definition of Mahatma is different as described in Bhagavad Gita. And like that, Lord Shri Krishna then further explained, while there are some who do not accept me, there are some who accept me, and there are others who worship other than me. And then we spoke about the concept of demigod worship, worship of impersonal God. And there we had discussed about the relationship between Krishna and Vishnu, Krishna and Devatas, and relationship between Krishna and Jiva Tattva. So we had discussed about 4 tattvas, Vishnu Tattva, Shakti Tattva, Shambhu Tattva, and Jiva Tattva. So in essence, Lord Shri Krishna in this particular, I forgot that I had a slide ahead. Yeah. So if Krishna is that one God, what about others? So we had discussed about this particular relationship about different 4 tattvas. And in the end of the discussion, in the last verses of chapter 9, Lord Shri Krishna describes the glories of Bhagavad Gita, where the essence, the key point is that bhakti is very simple and it does not require any material qualification. And Krishna is simply pleased with devotion. This is the chapter 9 where Lord Shri Krishna says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prachati. Koi bhakti se mujhe deta hai, mujhe approach karta hai, so I willingly accept. Not everything. Krishna says, Pataram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. He doesn't say, yeah, you can give me outside of this, like meat, alcohol, and things like that. No, that is not acceptable. And finally, Lord Shri Krishna concludes chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita with the essence. What is the essence of Bhagavad Gita? If anyone ever asks you, this verse of 9th chapter, 34th verse, gives the essence of Bhagavad Gita. And that is, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskaru Mam Evashyasi Yuktvevam Atmana Matparayanaha. In essence, Krishna says, engage your mind, always thinking of me, become my devotee, offer my obeisances. In essence, this is how Lord Shri Krishna concludes chapter 9, giving the essence is become my devotee. So when Arjuna heard this, he began to think. He thought, my dear Lord, he's thinking, he has not spoken to Lord. He's thinking, my dear Lord, you want us to man mana bhava mad bhakto, means engage our mind onto you. So how do we fix one's mind? Oh, wait a second. Okay, sorry. How do we fix one's mind on Krishna? Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna in chapter 10 describes his opulences, which is also called as vibhuti, on which a devotee or a spiritualist can fix his mind. In other words, when we see beautiful, opulent, and powerful things in this world, we can remember who is the cause of it. Just like in one of the previous sessions, I gave you an example of when a child comes back to home from his school, and on the dining table, if he sees the wallet, and if he sees the car key of his father, although he has not seen his father, he would immediately remember his father. So this is what is the essence of Sambandha Gyan, when we recognize who is the cause and to whom this whole creation belongs to. For an example, Srila Prabhupada once was on a morning walk. I believe that was the beach at San Francisco. And it was early morning and a very beautiful sunrise was happening. So one of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada said, Prabhupada, look, what a beautiful sunrise. And Srila Prabhupada immediately responded, if the painting is so beautiful, how beautiful must be the painter? You got the connection? Srila Prabhupada, while seeing the beauty, while seeing that opulence, remembered whom? Lord Shri Krishna. Therefore, this chapter 10 is very important. Hearing it, discussing it, increases the devotion towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, this chapter 10 is titled as the Opulence of the Absolute, which is also otherwise known as Vibhuti Yoga. Here, as I explained before, Lord Shri Krishna explains how the spiritualist can simultaneously perceive Krishna as the source of this creation and also Krishna present within this creation, so that the spiritualists or the devotees of the Lord can always remember Krishna. Because this is how the ninth chapter ended. Man mana bhavamat bhakto madhyaji namaskara. So how do we remember you, my dear Lord? So therefore, Lord continues to speak in this chapter. Let us define an acronym for this chapter, and then we'll look into the details of this particular chapter. CSEE is the acronym for this chapter, where S stands for source of everything. Just give me a quick second. There is something going wrong with my presentation here. Just give me a quick second, please. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. I'm just quitting out some unnecessary applications that are running right now. Okay, fine. Should be fine now. So S stands for source of everything. Let me share the screen with all of you. All right. I hope all of you are able to see the screen now again. Hopefully it should work fine. Yeah. So where S stands for source of everything, and this particular chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita begins with a very interesting verse. Let's take a look at the verse again. Let's take a look at the verse. Chapter 10, verse number 1, where Krishna tells Arjuna, hear again, hear from me. Now, if you reflect back, I know I'm going to ask a difficult question to all of you, but I'll say make a wild guess. Just make a wild guess. When was the last time Arjuna spoke? So let me make it a little simpler for you. We're in the 10th chapter. So when was the last time Arjuna spoke? Arjuna said something or Arjuna inquired from Krishna. Was it in the 9th chapter? Was it in the 8th chapter? Was it in the 7th chapter? Or was it in the 6th chapter? So you just give the chapter number first, then we'll talk about which section of it, if in case you remember. Where was it last time Arjuna spoke? Okay, some of you are writing something. Yeah, actually, I'm glad to see. The last time Arjuna spoke was in chapter 8. 9th chapter, Lord Shri Krishna spoke and he heard it. And now again, Lord Shri Krishna says, Arjuna, hear from me. And what Krishna says here? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bhuya eva mahabhao Shrinu me paramam vacha Yatteham priyamanaya Vakshyami hitakamaya. Supreme Personality, SPOG refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Shri Krishna said, Shrinu me, listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna, because you are my dear friend, and for your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained. So let's talk about 2 words here, which are very important. One is Bhagavan. You might have noticed Srila Vyasadeva, whenever Krishna speaks, Vyasadeva never says Krishna Uvacha, Govinda Vacha, Madhusudan Vacha, Vasudeva Vacha. No. When it comes to Krishna speaking, Vyasadeva always says Bhagavan Vacha. Whereas when Arjuna speaks, Arjuna Vacha. Sanjaya speaks, Sanjaya Vacha. So why Vyasadeva is calling Krishna as Bhagavan? What is the meaning of the word Bhagavan? And not only this, it is Srila Vyasadeva who also wrote Srimad Bhagavatam, which we were just reading today morning in our Bhagavatam class. In 1st canto, 3rd chapter, Srila Vyasadeva or Sutta Goswami is describing different incarnations of Lord, like Lord Ram, Nrsimhadev, Vamana, Varaha, Matsya Avatar, Kapila Muni, and etc. etc. However, when the description of Krishna came, look what Vyasadeva writes. He says, Ekona vimshe vimshati me vrishnishu prapya janmani. मैं उनके बारे में बात करने वाला हूं जो वृष्णि के घर में जन्मा है. उनका नाम है रामकृष्ण इति भुवो भगवान अहरत भरम. वो भगवान है अहरत भरम और यहाँ धरती का बोझ हटाने के लिए आए हैं. And they have come here to remove the burden of planet Earth. Again, Srila Vyasadeva in Srimad Bhagavatam, once again, when it comes to Krishna, again he addresses Bhagavan. Why? What does it mean? Whereas when it was for Lord Ram and other incarnations, Vyasadeva have not used the word Bhagavan. So all of you might be aware, there are many religions prominent today in the world. And every religion says, my God is the best. My God is the supreme. So it is an obvious question. Is there one supreme Lord? Does the Lord of different faiths, are they one? Are they different? What is the truth behind? So a little bit take a look into this aspect, which we have not discussed until now. We are on the 10th chapter. So we're going to talk about this word Bhagavan. For example, let's take Christianity. Jesus never said he's God. Jesus always proclaimed to be Son of God. Whereas for Islam, Muhammad Prophet, he always said that I'm a prophet, I am a messenger. He never said I am God. Moses, he said, I am a messenger of God. Talk about Guru Nanak, he also is regarded as a great spiritual teacher. Buddhism, another prominent religion, Buddha taught meditation and renunciation. He never even in fact spoke about God. Mahavir Jain was a liberated and perfected soul. He is not treated or even worshipped as God because he never claimed. So all these personalities from all these prominent religions never ever claimed to be God. So who is God? Who is the supreme personality of Godhead? So let's take a look at the very first definition. We're going to give two definitions here. So what is the first definition of God? And does it suffices the definition, or does it suffices for Krishna to be categorized as Bhagwan or God for that reason? So supreme personality of Godhead means he must be the supreme controller, proprietor, enjoyer, and must be the source of everything. If I ask you a simple question, are you the enjoyer? Yes, we are the enjoyer, but we are not the ultimate enjoyer. But because for us to be an ultimate enjoyer, I must be a proprietor of everything. And if I am a proprietor of everything, then I should also have the ability to control it. I can only control it if I am the source of everything. Thus, because I am not source of everything, which I know around, thus mathematically it proves I am not the ultimate enjoyer. So that ultimate enjoyer is said to be Supreme God. Bhagavad Gita, Lord Shri Krishna describes, we have discussed this verse already, Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, 29th verse, where Krishna says, Bhoga Aishwarya Pasaktanam, Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. I am Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam. I am, the enjoyer of all the tapa and all the tapas austerities like Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. I am the God of the gods. Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. I am the benefactor of all. I am the supreme controller. I am the cause of all causes. This 7th chapter, 7th verse, where Krishna says, I am my sarvam idam poktam sutre manigana iva. Krishna gives an example of a pearls tied along together with each other through a thread. And Krishna says, I am that thread by which this whole creation is sustained. I am the source of all, which you're going to read in the 10th chapter itself, where Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhu matha sarvam pravartate iti matva vajante ma buddhava samanvita. In essence, where Lord Shri Krishna says, all these material and spiritual creations have manifested for me, and I am the source of all. Like in the end, Brahma says, Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishna, Satchid Ananda Vigraha. Brahma declares it is Krishna whose form is of Satchit Ananda. Anadiradir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karana. He is the cause of all cause. He is the ultimate cause, and he is that supreme Ishwar. Therefore, Vyasadev defines or declares Krishna to be the supreme personality of Godhead, जिसको संस्कृत में भगवान कहा जाता है. Now, this is supreme controller, proprietor, enjoy, and source. There is another definition of Bhagwan which is given by Parashar Muni, and he defines Bhagwan as Aishwarasya Samagrasya Virayasya Yashashashriya Jnana Vairagyaschaiva Sanabha Itangana. Bhagavan, Van means possessor. We have heard of the word Dhanwan. Dhanwan means who is a possessor of wealth. Vidwan, possessor of Vidya. Bhagavan means possessor of Bhag. And that Bhag is described in this verse is of 6 opulences. And what are the 6 opulences? Aishwarasya, Viryasya, Yashasha, Shriya, Jnana, and Vairagya. Aishwarya refers to wealth, opulence. Virasya refers to strength. Yash refers to fame. Shriya refers to beauty. Jnana refers to knowledge. And Vairagya refers to renunciation. Now you might wonder, what's the big thing? Even I have some wealth. I have a bank account. Virasya, I have some strength. I can lift a few things. Yasha, I also have some fame. Well, that's not the meaning of Bhagwan. Means he has these things in full, not partial, not semi. Only then that person can be called as Bhagwan. So when we look in the world around, yes, wealth makes person attractive. However, think about Lord Shri Krishna, the deity of the wealth, Mother Lakshmi, was said to be goddess of the wealth. As we know, Lakshmi Narayan, Mother Lakshmi is always sitting by the side of Lord Shri Krishna, always shown as massaging the feet of Lord Shri Krishna. I'm not going to quote much verses now, but these are some of the verses which are quoted about this aspect. Second aspect of opulence of God is strength. Some of us might have gone to a gym to build up a strength, which is a very difficult thing, but it takes effort. We build some strength, but unless we continue putting that effort, the strength, the muscles and all that goes away. But think about Lord Shri Krishna. He was a young boy, 7 years, 7 months, 7-day old when he lifted. Not a grass, not a paper. He didn't lift a grass or paper mountain. It was a real mountain. And Govardhan that Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So, I mean, there was a heavy rainfall in Hinjawadi. So, looks like because that internet went away for a while. All right. Thank you for hanging on. I'll just start the presentation again. Okay. So, where are we? So sorry. Yes, so we were talking about the fame. Allow me to share my screen again. Hare Krishna. Okay, yes. Thank you for hanging on despite the internet outage. Okay, so we have been talking about why Vyasadeva called Krishna as Bhagwan. What does the word Bhagwan means? And is Krishna really that supreme personality of Godhead? Is there only one supreme God? That's what we have been discussing right now. So the third opulence, fame, as we were discussing about, to acquire fame in this world is a very big task. And even if somebody gets become famous, that doesn't last forever. Think about how God is the most famous person. Of course, those who love him, those who worship him, definitely, he's very famous among them. But God is also very famous among atheists because atheists spend their life talking about the God does not exist. Right? You know, unlike unlike the other personalities. So think about Krishna. Because he stole Makhan, he's given the name Makhan Chor. Imagine if one of you steal anything, हाथ पे लिखा जाएगा चोर. No Makhan Chor, no subtraction addition. Krishna stole Makhan, he's called Makhan Chor. Krishna ran away from battlefield, he's called Ranachor. Krishna danced with the gopis, with the wives of others men, he's called as Gopinath. And until today, unlimited songs have been written about every single incident and activities of Lord Shri Krishna. Fourth opulence of the Lord is Shriya, which means beauty. Now, when it comes to beauty, only living entities of the same species can appreciate each other's beauty. For example, if there is a very beautiful she cockroach walks in the room right now. Now, very beautiful she cockroach, I meant. Now, that she cockroach may have a lot of great following among the cockroach species. But for you and I, if the she cockroach have to run away, we don't know she is a she or he, we're probably going to run away. But whereas if there is a very beautiful man or a smart man has to walk down here right away, so we would feel attracted to that person. The point is the beauty is limited to the same species. But whereas when it comes to Lord Shri Krishna, we know in his Braja Leela, the monkeys were attracted to Lord. The peacocks, the cows or the calves, they're all pastimes. Not only the pashu pakshi, not even the animals or the birds or the creepers, even the tree. When Krishna would walk in the Vrindavan forest, then all the trees would bend down so that Krishna can easily pluck the fruits. All the trees will bend down so that Krishna has a shadow and is protected from the sunlight. Like that, every living entity is attracted by the beauty of Lord Shri Krishna, which is described in the scripture. Fifth opulence is knowledge. If let's say you have to give a speech at 8 o'clock today evening, we all have to work hard for it. The speech which probably would be documented, recorded on internet, you probably would prepare well for it. Think about Lord Shri Krishna. He wasn't aware that Arjuna is going to get bewildered. On the spot, Arjuna asked a question. And Krishna impromptu spoke. And 5,000 years later, we are still trying to understand what did Krishna spoke. Yes or no? And the beauty of this Bhagavad Gita is, as many times we read it, to that much times and degree, we acquire knowledge, wisdom from this Bhagavad Gita. Every time it speaks something different. And such a great wisdom, which Lord Shri Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita 7, chapter verse number 2, Jnanam te hamsa vijnanam idam vakshami asheshataha yajnanatvane bhuyonyach jnanatvayam avashishyate. Hey Arjuna, I shall now declare unto you full knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This is 7th chapter verse number 2. Krishna says, this being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. You may say, Prabhuji, all right, but there still could be someone who can have all the name, fame, wealth, beauty, strength, everything. Okay, let's consider there is somebody who has all this thing. But the person who has all these five opulences, can he ever or she ever have the sixth opulence, that is renunciation? It is said, even a beggar is proud of his penny, which means whatever we have, we become very attached to it. If someone is very beautiful, the biggest fear for that person is of growing old. Someone has a wealth, the biggest fear for that person is of losing wealth. Somebody has a lot of knowledge, is always worried of his competitors. Whereas think about Lord Shri Krishna, who is a cause of all causes. Arjuna asked Krishna, my dear Lord, would you be my charioteer? And that Supreme Personality Godhead, who you see right now on your screen, immediately became the charioteer, which was a very menial job. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, that personality whose feet is massaged by Mother Lakshmi, not one, hundreds and thousands, that's what Brahma says. Lakshmi sahasrashat sambhrama sevyamanam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. That Krishna became a charioteer of Arjuna. That's not the one incident only. That same Krishna, when Sudama the Vipra, a poor Brahman, came to meet Krishna at Dwarka, Lord Shri Krishna washed his feet, that Brahmana's feet, Sudama's feet, by his own hands. Renunciation, sixth opulence. Where Lord Shri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita himself says, although this creation is of mine, but I am not attached to it at all. And not only this, there are many evidences which actually proves Krishna to be Supreme Personality Godhead. Krishna showed the whole universe within his mouth to Mother Yashoda. And that same Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, we're going to discuss about this tomorrow, chapter 11, where Krishna showed his universal form to Arjuna. So like this, we can conclude and understand why Srila Vyasadeva address Krishna to be Bhagavan. Krishna is not an incarnation of Vishnu. We already saw that last time. In fact, incarnations of Vishnu manifest from Krishna. So that's the point about Srila Vyasadeva addressing Krishna as Bhagavan. And the second important point in this very first verse of 10th chapter was Shrinu. Shrinu means hear from me. In other words, we cannot understand the process. In other words, to understand the source, that is the cause, while we all are the effects, because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, the effect cannot learn about its own cause by its own experimentations or empirical research. In other words, effect can never know about its cause. So we living entities can never ever know about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To give an example, a child is an effect where father and mother is a cause, right? That child cannot know through this experimentation or empirical research to find out who's his father. But that child can very easily know who is his father when he hears from his mother. Similarly, Lord Shri Krishna says, if you want to know me, if you want to know my nature, Arjuna, tat shrunu. That's the reason Lord Shri Krishna says we should hear from him to understand the science of the absolute truth, because he is the cause of all the material and spiritual creation. And one who approaches him can get the scientific insight into their identity and purpose. Lord Shri Krishna in the second verse explains, hey Arjuna, the host of demigods, now the sages know my origin opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages. At that time, Arjuna began to think. He said, my dear Lord, what will be the result of knowing you? What will person gain if we understand the absolute truth, if we understand who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Lord Shri Krishna explains the result of understanding the science of absolute truth in verse number 3 and verse number 7 of chapter 10. Where Lord Shri Krishna says, you will gain freedom from all sinful reactions. And the result of this knowledge, which I'm giving you in the 10th chapter, Arjuna, the person will engage in my devotional service because he would have no more doubts about one's existence, purpose of life, and relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada writes a very beautiful purport to the 7th verse. And he describes, many people say God is great, but how much God is great, hardly very few people know. I'll read out what Prabhupada says or writes in the purport. Generally, people know that God is great, but they do not know in detail how God is great. Here are the details. If one knows factually how God is great, then naturally he becomes a surrendered soul and engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord. When one factually knows the opulences of the Supreme, there is no alternative but to surrender to him. This factual knowledge can be known from the descriptions in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures. Essence is, if we really want to know God, we really want to build a relationship with Lord, we have to cultivate knowledge. But most of the people, even those who believe in God, those who may have altar in their house, they may worship and they may do some arti for the Lord every day. Even those people say, no time or no interest. So it's very interesting that we still find many people who put faith in God. Although they don't have knowledge, unless there is a knowledge, there cannot be faith. That's how we started the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita discussion, where Krishna says, I'm speaking to you now about my opulences, about my knowledge, so that you develop faith. Faith comes from knowledge. If there is no knowledge, there cannot be faith. So my question to all of you is, when people have not read Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita is a foundational book which gives us knowledge about the absolute truth. So then how and why people still believe God exists? There are different reasons. Any ideas? You have the chat hopefully enabled. If you want, you can type in why still people believe in God. And there are 4 prominent reasons why people believe in God. First, D is an acronym that you can remember easily. First is to fulfill desires. These are semi-religionists. For example, somebody has an interview. Before going for an interview, he'll visit a temple and say, my dear Lord, I have an interview. Please succeed me in the interview. He doesn't know in front of whom he's standing, but he knows I have to go to a temple. In temple, there are some deities. Just go and make the same prayer in front of every deity. At least koi to sunega. With that mindset, sometimes people go, why? To get their desires fulfilled. There is a fear of unknown. If in case he exists, better let him not trouble me. There was a friend of mine who was an atheist, who never believed in God, but he opened a showroom. And later on, when he called me, he told me when he opened a showroom, where it was an inauguration of the showroom, he had called a Pandit and he got puja done. And he had spent 25,000 rupees. This was more than 10 years ago. And I asked him, you had never believed in God. Why did you call for a Pandit? He said, I have spent 25 lakh rupees in the renovation of the showroom. If in case God exists, why do you take panga? Saste mein kaam nahi padega na 25,000 rupees mein. That is what fear of unknown. S, social pressure. I'm living in a society, there is Ganesh Chaturthi, then there is what? Durga festival, right? What we call? Navratri. Then we have Janmashtami, then Dahi Handi. Then we have to fire crackers on Diwali. And so many things that happens. Why? Because I'm living in a society, there is a social pressure. Otherwise, I would not be accepted in the circle. And T refers to blind adherence to traditions, where people don't know why their mother did what they did, but probably the daughter follows the customs and traditions she learned from her mother. Similarly, similar practice could be seen in the boys, where they saw their father going to every Saturday to a temple. But the son up to today doesn't know the father went to temple for offering worship to Shani Devta or Shiv Devta. So like that, people stay confused, not knowing why what is happening. So the point is, our faith cannot be fixed up until we have proper knowledge. And depending on the situations, our faith keeps changing. I'll give you a very small example to help you understand with it. There was a village, and outside the village, there was a sadhu. Very, very famous sadhu, very austere tapasvi sadhu. And the villagers began to talk, we should invite the sadhu. We should learn about God from the sadhu. So they pleaded him repeatedly requested him. Finally, the sadhu agreed, and big pandal program was organized. Sadhu was invited on the stage, and then the sarpanch introduced him, and he gave the seat to Sadhu. Sadhu sat down, and the very first thing Sadhu asked, "So, how many of you believe God exists?" Not even a single person raised his hand or her hand. Sadhu said the second and the last statement. Well, if none of you believe God exists, then what is there for me to talk to you? He kept the mic and he walked away from the stage. Everyone was shocked. And they began to discuss, what is this? With so much effort, the sadhu came, he walked away. Let us call him again. So they decided this time sadhu comes, if he asks a question, we all going to raise our hands. So it was decided. Sadhu came back again after a lot of repeated requests. And when sadhu came back again sadhu sat down, he asked, so how many of you believe God exists? And this time, being trained from the last experience, everyone raised their hands. Again, the sadhu spoke the second statement and the last statement. Sadhu said, well, if all of you know about God, then what is there for me to speak? Again, sadhu left away. Now everyone was confused. Why this sadhu is not speaking? What can we do about it? So then they decided, this time when we call the sadhu, 50% people will say yes, other 50 will say no. Sadhu was invited, sat on the stage. Third time, lot of repeated requests. And then Sadhu said, so how many of you believe God exists? So half of the people raised their hand and half of the people did not raise their hand. And once again, Sadhu spoke second time and the only time. And Sadhu said, well, those who have not raised their hands can know about God from those who have raised their hands. There is nothing for me to speak here. And like this, the sadhu went away again. The lesson of the story is just like the villagers, they all were theists. They believed something about God. That's the reason they were calling sadhu, yes or no? But look at their level of faith. Based on circumstances and situations, they kept on wearing their faith. Yes, no, maybe. That is what is being described. If we don't cultivate proper knowledge, if we don't study Bhagavad Gita, at least once, it's good if we study multiple times. Until then, we'll not have proper knowledge. And until then, we can never know who is God, what is God, and will only have blind following. Like this, Lord Shri Krishna, or this subject matter concludes here with the importance of cultivating knowledge. Now, in the next section, or the next section of this chapter 10, Lord Shri Krishna will give the essence of Bhagavad Gita. This is said to be the 4 most important verses of Bhagavad Gita. And these 4 verses of Bhagavad Gita actually describes the roadmap of our bhakti, where our 3 stages are described. So these 4 verses describes the roadmap of bhakti, where 3 stages are described. So let's take a look at 3 stages. So the first verse, which means 10.8, which I'll elaborate ahead, describes Krishna's opulences. And that is the first stage, which is called as Sambandha Gyan, where the relationship between the Supreme Lord and the living entities is described. That's the first stage. The second stage, which is described in the second verse, which is 10.9, where the activities of one who knows his opulence are described. In other words, the second stage is the stage of a practice. When I understand Krishna is the Supreme Lord, I am the part and parcel of the Lord, then how do I live my life? What do I do in my day-to-day life is the second stage which is described. And the third stage is the result. What happens when you take to the practice of spiritual life, which is described in the third and fourth verse of this 4 shlokas which have been taken here. So let's take a look at these verses here. This is 10.8, the verse 1 of these 4 verses, which introduces or which establish the relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Lord. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mataha sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Iti matva bhajante mam. इस चीज को जानकर जो व्यक्ति इस चीज को समझता है, in other words, one who understands this knowledge, this fact, what he does, he engages in my devotional service. Buddha bhava samanvitaha. So what is that knowledge? Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhu. Everything has emanated from me. I am the source of all spiritual and material world. So this is how Lord Shri Krishna establishes that I am the Supreme Lord and everything in this world is my part and parcel. So what is the principle? What is the key lessons of this verse? Very important, very interesting. And that is this verse establishes universal brotherhood. What it does, it establishes universal brotherhood, which means if you love Krishna, then you love all. Krishna says, everything belongs to me. Every living entity in this world is my part and parcel, which means when somebody begins to love Krishna, then he sees every living entity as his brother and sister. To give an example, let's say your company gives you a visa to go to work in a foreign country. Let's say you go to America. When you go to America to work, and on the very first day you find in your office another Indian, and everyone else is an international person there. How many of you agree you will immediately go try to speak to that Indian, or else maybe later in the day you would want to talk to that person? Yes or no? You all agree? I don't know how you're going to respond to it. If you want to raise your hand or else reply in the chat box. You all going to do that? We would like to interact with them. Now imagine you are from North India and that person turns out to be also from North India. So probably you're going to go and hug him only. North India, North India, South India, South India, that goes up in mentality. So point is, yes, why we would feel a kind of a sense of connection with that Indian? Because, there is a natural bond. We are from the same land. That bodily consciousness is there. So when we cultivate Krishna consciousness, then the whole world is our house, our home. Every living entity is my brother and sister. Srila Prabhupada was once visiting Australia. He was invited to give a lecture in the church of St. Francis of Assisi. At the end of the lecture, one of the regular member of the church asked Srila Prabhupada, what is your understanding about St. Francis? Srila Prabhupada said, what was his philosophy of life? And he explained his philosophy of life was that he considered every living entity as his brother and sister. Srila Prabhupada had tears rolling down his eyes, and Srila Prabhupada said, oh, he was a pure devotee. Why? Because he could see the universal brotherhood. Why? Because he loved Krishna. So universal brotherhood is an outcome of one's love and understanding of Krishna. So then Arjuna began to wonder. Arjuna said, well, my dear Lord, the one who understands, one who loves you, how does he engage himself? What does he do? And Lord Shri Krishna speaks the next verse, 10th chapter, 9th verse. Machitta madgata pranam bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. So what are the activities of this person? Who loves Krishna, who understand who Krishna is, what are the activities? Machitta madgata prana bodhyanta parasam. That devotee or that person is always absorbed thinking about me. His joy of life is remembering me, serving me, thinking about me, talking about me, singing my glories. Like that, this person, tushyanti cha ramanti cha, derives satisfaction and happiness in his own life by discussing and remembering me. So we may not be at the level where we have love of Godhead, but what does it mean for us? For us, for all of us who have understood Krishna is Bhagwan, when Vyasadeva addressed Krishna to be Bhagwan, means he is actually the original personality of Godhead. For those of us who understood the subject matter, then what are our activities supposed to be? Then our daily activity is supposed to be, how many of you remember ABCD formula, right? The basic tenets of spiritual life. And today I wish to enter one more activity. So we know A, B, C, D. A for association of saintly people. B refers to reading wisdom literatures, so books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. C refers to chanting of holy names. D refers to diet Krishna Prasadam. And here I wish to add one more. E. E refers to engaging in devotional service, performing some devotional activity like Tulsi worship and etc. like that. So this becomes a regular activity for those who at least have understood that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. I'm quite out of time, so I wanted to give some examples for these. I will skip that. I'll just focus on the principles now in the remaining. So I may take 15 minutes more just to come to the conclusion of this subject matter. So I'll go ahead. So that's the whole idea about it. What are the activities? So then Arjuna begins to think, my dear Lord, then what is the result? What happens to this person who's absorbed in thinking about you, serving you? Lord Shri Krishna says, Prayojana, which means the result, that is perfection. What happens to him? Krishna explains in 10th and the 11th verse, Tesham satayuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yugatam enamam upyantite. In essence, Lord Shri Krishna says, I guide that person so that he can come back to me. I personally dispel any ignorance that he may have in his heart with the lamp of knowledge. I mean, this subject matter cannot be completed if I don't give you one example at least. So allow me, bear with me. Let me just give you one example so you see how Krishna, what he is speaking here, actually happens in truth in the lives of devotees. In a very concise way, I'll just speak about the life of Nasingha Mehta, a great, great devotee of Lord Sri Krishna, who you could very well say, what was his everyday activity? Machita Madgata Pranta, who was always engaged in remembering and thinking about the Lord and serving the Lord. He was a very poor Brahmin who was married, had several kids, particularly daughters. And then the daughter grew up, and it was a time for her marriage, and the wife of Nasingha Mehta was very upset. Hey, you idle person, don't do any work. Our daughter is getting grown up. She has to get married. Find a match. So, like this, the wife of Nasingha Mehta began to trouble Nasingha Mehta. And Nasingha Mehta will always say, don't worry, Krishna promises in 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that he always protects his devotees. Krishna would arrange anything. But the wife was becoming restless. So one day, Nasingha Mehta, being disturbed, prayed to the Lord, my dear Lord, please protect me. Do something about my daughter. She has to get married. Send somebody who my daughter can get married. And you won't believe, the very next day, suddenly one family turned up on the gate of Nasingha Mehta. Of course, he lived in a hut. There was no gate. I meant to say he came to the door of Nasingha Mehta. So he was a very poor, so of course there was no gate. Came to the hut of Nasingha Mehta, and suddenly the marriage was fixed between this family who came, and they said, we have a proposal. We want your daughter to be in marriage to our son. And because this is the best season, the best time, and the marriage was fixed 4 days from then. And now the wife began to say, Arey, hamare beti ki shaadi hai, we need wealth, we need to have a celebration. How can we do it? We are poor, we don't even have food to eat for ourselves. What we do for the marriage? Go and do something. Nasingha Mehta, being forced like this, went out of the village to ask for some loan. And when he walked like this away, Nasingha Mehta loved hearing Krishna Katha. If anywhere, anytime Srimad Bhagavatam Katha was going on, Nasingha Mehta would forget everything. In another village, there was a 7-day Katha on Srimad Bhagavatam was going on. Nasingha Mehta was passing by that village, and he heard the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he sat down in the Srimad Bhagavatam Katha, and 7 day got over. And when Katha got over, then Nasingha Mehta asked one of the organizer there, Prabhu, what is the day today? And that person told the day, which was 3 days later than the marriage of his daughter. Nasingha Mehta was wild. He's like, oh my goodness, my wife is going to kill me. What happened to my daughter? She was supposed to get married. My dear Lord, what did he do? Like this, he began to cry. And then he began to plan, maybe I need to go and tell a lie. Or he was thinking maybe Krishna would have done something, would have protected me. Long story short, when Nasingha Mehta came back to his village, he was so ashamed, he was so embarrassed what people would tell, what people talk about him, that he could not attend the marriage of his own daughter, and because of his negligence, his daughter could not get married. So he was very ashamed when he was walking in. To his surprise, when he walked into the village, every villager with a big smile on their face came and started hugging Nasingha Mehta. Of course, there was no COVID era that time, so hugging was allowed, unlike today. So they came and started hugging and embracing Nasingha Mehta. And Nasingha Mehta was surprised. He said, what's going on? And they said, what a marriage. We have never ever attended such a marriage ceremony. And Nasingha Mehta was wondering, whose marriage? Whose marriage they're talking? Finally, when he reached his home, now he was really afraid. He was pretty sure his wife is going to beat him. When he reached his home, When he entered his hut, he saw his wife with a full big smile, and she said, "Oh, my dear husband, I'm so fortunate to marry to you. You're so magnanimous, you're so great." And the husband said, "What happened?" He was really doubtful. "What happened? Why are you talking like this? What about my daughter's marriage?" She said, "What? What are you talking? You only sent that 11-year-old dark complexioned boy who came here and he brought so much wealth, he brought so much grains and groceries that we celebrated our daughter's marriage with such a great pomp. And when I asked this boy, 'Who are you?' the boy told me that Narsingha Mehta has sent me." And when Narsingha Mehta heard this, he fainted, realizing it was Lord Shri Krishna who always protects his devotee in every situation of life. So that's the whole point here. That's this one small story. There are hundreds of stories like this, which explains the meaning and the purpose of this particular verses which we are discussing here like that. So in essence, this 4 verses talks about, the very first verse talks about the universal brotherhood, which means when we love Krishna, we love every living entity. Second was, so what happens to a person who knows Krishna? How does he respond? How does he live? So we talked about his daily activities in our case to follow A, B, C, D, E formula. And the third, the result. What happens to the devotees? Lord's protection and Lord's reciprocation. So when Arjuna heard this, how did he responded? When Arjuna heard all this, he became completely freed from all the doubts that he had and finally accepted Krishna as a supreme personality of Godhead. And he at once boldly declared, "You are Param Brahma, Param Dhama, you are the supreme personality of Godhead." And verse number 12 to verse number 15, particularly verse number 12 to 13, Arjuna gives his verdict. Hey Krishna, you are the supreme personality of Godhead. Like this, Arjuna expressed his acceptance of everything that Krishna had said. And finally, Arjuna, in verse number 16, makes a request. And this is the first time Arjuna is speaking after text number 2 of chapter 8, where Arjuna had asked questions to Krishna in 8.1 and 8.2. And here Lord Shri Krishna, Arjuna says, "My dear lords, please tell me in detail of your divine opulences, by which you pervade all this world, by which you are present all over the creation. Please explain me, so that you can be appreciated in all pervading aspects." Text number 17, "My dear Lord, please tell me, how can I constantly think of you? How shall I know you as you are?" And finally, "I am very, very eager to hear about you." Which Srila Prabhupada in the purport writes, it's a natural outcome of a person once he has understood his relationship with the Lord, he becomes very, very eager to hear more. And just like a young boy and a young girl, when they fall in love with each other, they're very eager to hear about the other person. And that becomes a favorite subject. Similarly, Arjuna here expresses, "I am very, very eager to hear about you." So when Arjuna here declares that Krishna, you are the Param Brahma, Param Dhama, you are the Supreme Personality Godhead, very interestingly, he doesn't make a verdict. In the 13th verse, he says, "My dear Lord, it is not I am speaking." Even the great sages like Narada, Vyasa, Sita, Devala, they all have declared, "You are indeed the Supreme Personality of Godhead." So, with this, we come to the last section of chapter 10. Why is Arjuna asking that, "Please tell me, how can I perceive you in this world?" And the idea is because Krishna is spiritual, and whereas we are in this material dilemma. So when we're caught up with this material senses, how material senses can perceive which is spiritual, it is anti, which is a kind of a dichotomy, it's not possible. So for a common man, Arjuna, out of his compassion, is asking Krishna to tell us how we can perceive him in the things of this world that we recognize. Just like in this section, Krishna will say, "I am the taste of the water." Like this, Krishna will describe his opulences so that we can perceive him or perceive his presence in everything around us. And that becomes the last section of this chapter 10, which I am not going to describe in details. I will request all of you, you can read by yourself, where Lord Shri Krishna describes almost 82 vibhutis or opulences, where Krishna agrees to Arjuna's request, and he speaks only his prominent amongst the limitless opulences, which he describes in chapter 10, of which 82 prominent opulences are described. Why Krishna does so? By doing this, Krishna explains how one can actually think about him, meditate on him, and see him everywhere. It is not that Krishna is physically all the things he mentions, but rather that he is a source of the opulence of these things, their strength, fame, wealth, and so on. After naming 82 opulences, which are given from verse number 19 onwards, it will be a homework for all of you to refer it, where Krishna describes what are those. I am the strength of the strong, I am the intelligence of the intelligent. Like this, Krishna describes all those opulences. So, after naming these 82 opulences, Krishna concludes by stating that these simply hint at my glory, since I pervade and support the entire universe with a mere fragrance of my energy. And Lord Shri Krishna concludes the 10th chapter with this verse. Athava bahunai kimya tena tavarjuna vishthabhyam idam krishnam ekam shrena sito jagat. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. In conclusion, in essence, while discussing the subject of spirituality amongst different audiences, we all would have experienced certain reservations which invariably come forward. Like there would always be people who would complain that they cannot see God in their work. Some would say that why God cannot manifest in front of our eyes, while others say that we will only believe if we have a direct experience of the God, like show me God and so forth. In chapter 10 that we just discussed, Krishna explains how the spiritualists or the devotees can simultaneously perceive God, aham sarvasya prabhu matha sarvam pravartate, as a cause of all cause, as a source of all creation. And similarly, when Krishna explains his 82 opulences, through that we can understand how Krishna is also present within his creation. However, this requires not an intellectual effort or understanding. This is where often we make a mistake. We think, I need to understand this. It is not fitting my brain. I am not getting this. I fail to understand. It's not a subject matter of understanding. It is not just a mere exercise of our mind where we can fit in Krishna and understand this. However, this is a subject matter which calls for the transformation of one's consciousness that leads to the revelation of the absolute truth within oneself. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upiyantite. One who is engaged incessantly in offering devotional service unto me. Bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam. Who is engaged in rendering loving devotional service unto me, Krishna says, I give him or her the intelligence by which that person can come back to me. It's a subject matter of surrendering and following the instructions, not a subject matter of understanding. Because when we talk about the cause, our creator, we are the effect. We can never understand the creator or cause of our existence by our effort. It is only possible through revelation. With that, we conclude this chapter 10, titled as Vibhuti Yoga, or the opulence of the absolute, where the acronym for this chapter was C. source of everything, and then 4 verses, essence of Gita. In the very first section, we spoke about 2 important points. Bhagavan, why Krishna is called as Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We had also reconciled the point of contention between various religions, where different religions claim that their God is supreme and all that. We had discussed about that in the beginning also. And then we established the paribhasha or definition of Bhagwan. How Krishna fits the definition of Bhagwan, which is given by Parashamuni in Vishnu Puran. And then the second section was the essence of Gita, 4 shlokas, which are like road maps, where the first shloka describes about universal brotherhood. If you love Krishna, you love everyone. The second shloka describes the activities of the devotee, and the third shloka or fourth shloka describes the result, how Lord Shri Krishna reciprocates to the devotees who are Madchitta Madgata Prana Bodhayanta Parantapas. Katyantas chamam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha. Those are always engaged, absorbed in rendering service unto me. Krishna says, I award them, I protect them, and I personally remove the ignorance from their life so that they can come back to me. And with that, we conclude our chapter 10. Tomorrow, when we meet, we'll be discussing a very interesting subject matter titled as the universal form, a very, very unique manifestation of the absolute truth, which was so fearsome, so fierce for Arjuna. When he saw it, he asked for it. When he saw it, he got so terrified, he began to beg Krishna, my dear Lord, please, please, please stop this PowerPoint presentation. Enough of it. Too much horror. Please come back to your two-handed form. And then Lord Shri Krishna took the four-handed form, and then he took the two-handed form. Now, if I have something, then only I can show it now. Because Krishna is the cause of the four-handed form. That's the reason Krishna could manifest four-handed form. And then finally, on the request of Arjuna, he took two-handed form. So tomorrow we'll discuss about this very fierce form called as a universal form of Virat Roop, and what we can learn from this chapter 11 in tomorrow's discussion. With that, thank you all for attending today's discussion, and kindly excuse us for a little bit of technical glitch that we had to face in the beginning. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sincerely thank you for each one of you for joining us. Vishwa Kiran Prabhu is the host today. If anyone has question, Vishwa Kiran Prabhu, for me, or else we'll pause here and we'll conclude for today. Can we give them the right to unmute themselves and ask if they want to?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, I have a question.
You have to ask them.
Yes, Paras. Yes, Paras Prabhu. You can ask your question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, thanks a lot for this wonderful session. So, Prabhuji, my question is, we know that because we are reading the scriptures under the guidance of
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Krishna is the Supreme Lord.
Paras, your voice is faint. Can you speak a little louder, please?
Okay, is it okay now, Prabhuji? Is it okay?
This is far better. This is far better.
Okay, Prabhuji. So my question is, we are reading Bhagavad Gita under the guidance of Guru. So we know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. But then there are Shaivites who believes that Lord Shiva is the Supreme Lord, and they give the reference of the Shiv Puran. They say that Shiva came first, and then from Shiva, Brahma and Vishnu, they originated. And then they also tell some stories from Shiv Puran, which confirms this fact. So how to reply that then? Because then there are Shaivites and there are Vaishnavites. So Vaishnavites say Vishnu is the Supreme Lord, and Shaivites say Shiva is the Supreme Lord. So how to answer them?
Yeah, good. Well, there's a very beautiful verse which sums up this discussion, which is described about Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva's presiding deity or his worshipable deity is Sankarshan In fact, that is Lord Ram. And that is being described by Lord Shiva to Mother Parvati when Mother Parvati asked Lord Shiva, whom do you meditate on? And Lord Shiva said, Rama Rameti Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattvalyam Ramanam Varanane. And he talks about the potency of the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, where he says, one who chants 1,000 names of Vishnu is equivalent to the one name of Lord Ram. And Lord Shiva's, a lot of description of Lord Shiva comes in Ramayana and about his devotion for Lord Ram. So regarding Puranas, yes. So there are 18 Puranas, and there are 18 Puranas divided into 6 set of 3, 6, 6, 6. And there are 6 Puranas which are for mode of goodness. There are 6 Puranas which are for mode of passion, people who are in mode of passion. And there are 6 Puranas which are in mode of ignorance. Vishnu is the presiding deity of goodness, Brahma for passion, Shiva for tamoguna. So all these variegated scriptures are given, and similarly the worship of devatas are also prescribed, because there are people of variegated natures because of the influences of the modes of material nature. Just to allow them and take shelter of somebody, that's the reason so much variegatedness is offered in the Veda scriptures, so that at least people should accept somebody is superior to me. Ultimately, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, they also accepted. Ravana worshipped Shiva later on. Whereas in the beginning, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, they all worshipped Brahma, thinking that he is a creator, which is a fact, no doubt about it. But they didn't know from where did Brahma got his strength. Tena Brahma Adi Kavve Muhanti Surya. That Brahma got the wisdom how to create this creation from Vishnu. Within his heart, that wisdom was given. And then from that Brahma, his son, in the form of his son, Rudra appeared, which is also called as Shiva, 11 incarnations of Lord Shiva in the form of Rudra. And later on, Ravana worshipped. So even the demoniac class would accept some Devta, so that at least they make some progress.
Okay.
At least they understand there is some divine arrangement. That's the reason to accommodate all. So much variegatedness is offered in the scriptures. For Tamoguna people, to inspire them, obviously is going to mention that Shiva is the Supreme Lord. Yes or no?
Yes.
Just like the modern day religions, they promote their religion by saying that my God is a Supreme God. Then only you will continue following that practice. No? That's the reason in Tamoguna scriptures, it is described Shiva is the topmost because he is the presiding deity of Tamoguna. That doesn't mean Lord Shiva is in Tamoguna. But he's a presiding deity. That's his responsibility. And those who are in mode of passion read mode of passion scriptures. For them, Brahma is the Supreme Lord. Like Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, they had worshipped Brahma. That's the background.
Prabhuji, who created these scriptures then? All 18 Puranas, who created them?
Well, this all had been written by Srila Vyasadeva. Scriptures are of two kinds, Smriti and Shruti. There's a lot of background noise. Can we mute everyone once? Except for Paras? Okay. So, Paras Prabhu, there is Shruti and Smriti. Shruti is what is heard. Smriti is what is realized and then spoken. So, Puranas and Itihasas are the part of Smriti, which the self-realized sages over a period of time have spoken for fulfilling different purposes, like that. And to establish and to help the mankind, they have understood the Shastra, which is Shruti, and realized that, and then have, collected that wisdom in the form of stories which have happened in the different eras in the history, and that for particular context, they have presented the subject matter, like that. Thank you, Paras Prabhu.
Prabhuji, Anushri Mataji has a question. Anushri Mataji, you can unmute yourself and you can ask it. Or maybe I will read the question. Prabhuji, Anushri Mataji is asking the form of Lord in which form of Vishnu?
That's Lord Vishnu only. What form of Vishnu in the sense? Well, Srila Prabhupada, when he went to Tirupati Balaji, Srila Prabhupada said, this is Govinda, this is Bal Krishna. Whereas later on, Srila Ramanacharya, when he went there, it is said that he mounted 2 additional hens to the deity of Bal Gopal or to deities of Bal Krishna because of the fear of Shaivites at that point of time. So that's the history of it. It's Narayan and Vishnu. There's no difference in that. There's no point going in details of it. When it comes to Vishnu, there are 3 Vishnus: Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Shirodakshay Vishnu, like that. You can call him as a Narayan. Well, Srila Prabhupada called him as Bal Gopal or Bal Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else has any question, or else we can conclude it over here? Okay. Mukesh Prabhu, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, you can read the question.
Okay.
I can read the question. I see the question here.
Okay.
Which name and form of Supreme Personality of Godhead people worship before Krishna's avatar? Very good question. There is something called as Yuga Avatar. In every Yuga, Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali Yuga, there are different incarnations appears. So in those particular yugas, that could be the presiding deity. However, Krishna is not that Krishna became known only after when Krishna appeared. You know, Krishna, when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, there are stories of kings, rulers worshipping Lord Shri Krishna when they were even in Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, like that. So it's not that people got to know of Krishna after Krishna's appearance, because the wisdom of Krishna, the knowledge of Krishna was revealed in the scriptures, and scriptures were given to the mankind from the beginning of the time. So, for example, what we have today called as Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled 5,000 years ago, before the appearance of Buddha, right? And that Srimad Bhagavatam very clearly says, in Bhavishya, in future, expansion of Lord Vishnu would appear by the name of Buddha. He will appear in a place called Gaya, and his mother's name would be Anjana. If you want the verse, I can give you the verse also, which you can read. It is the first canto, 3rd chapter. So that is explained.
Is it written in Gita?
Knowledge which have always existed. Not that after Krishna appeared, then people recognize Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Okay, Mukesh?
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
All right. So, fine. Anything on YouTube? Okay, so we'll take the last question.
Hare
now.
Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam. There are 2 questions on YouTube, Prabhuji.
Yes, Shubham Prabhu, you can read out.
Suresh Bansal Prabhuji has asked why the materialist cannot understand Krishna spiritually. First
Bhoga
question.
Aishwarya Prasaktanam Taya Aparat Chetasam. 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, whose consciousness is absorbed in Bhoga and Aishwarya. Bhoga means sense gratification, Aishwarya means wealth. Taya Aparat Chetasam. His intelligence has been kidnapped. Taya Aparat Chetasam. His consciousness has been kidnapped by his desires for sense gratification. He can never ever think of Krishna because he can never develop attachment to Krishna because of his desires for sense gratification. But it is not that materialists cannot. Krishna in 9th chapter in the concluding section says, it doesn't matter who you were, it doesn't matter who you are, what matters is what you do today. If we take to the process of bhakti, regardless of what had been our background, what had been our present, we take to the principles of bhakti. Again, the principles of bhakti are A, B, C, D, E. I'm not teaching you alphabets here. I hope you understand the abbreviation of this alphabets. So if you follow those, then very soon we all can understand who Krishna is.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Next question is why the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called the most confidential?
Yes, please refer to the recording of 9th chapter. In the introduction of that, I have explained the answer for that.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, there are 2 more. Shall I go ahead?
Okay, please go ahead.
What is meant by saying that devotional service eternally exists?
Wonderful question. Devotional service eternally exists means that what you perform is never perishes. If somebody dies when he takes another birth, either in this world or anywhere else, or either in the spiritual world, he continues to progress in spiritual life. The spiritual credits are eternal. And second point is Even if a person goes back to Godhead, what does he do after going back to Godhead? बड़ी मेहनत करी भौतिक दुनिया में, अब मैं आराम से सोऊंगा, बस अब स्पिरिचुअल वर्ल्ड में मैं आईपीएल का क्रिकेट मैच देखूंगा, because the definition of spiritual world is no work, no anxiety. I have heard in Bhagavad Gita class there are trees that will give you abundant supply of food, so I don't have to work for anything. So now I peacefully relax and enjoy. No, that's not the idea. What do we do back in spiritual world? Continue performing bhakti. That is how bhakti is said to be eternal.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you very much. Last question, Prabhuji, from Shriya Deshpande. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, kindly tell me how to always properly think of Krishna and at the same time do our duties perfectly.
Chant Hare Krishna all the time. Eventually we'll learn to remember Krishna and perform our activity. Because when we are performing our activity, one thing we can always do is chant. Except for one thing, a disclaimer: don't chant while driving. At least do not chant on your beats. You can chant verbally, but don't move your beats while driving, because that could be hazardous to life. So this process of chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is the most easiest means to connect with the Lord and to remember Him at all the times. In a practical manners, okay, let's say it's a mother asking a question. Imagine, well, she's taking care of a child, or maybe she's preparing a food for the husband or our child or the parents, whatnot. Very well, you can have a kirtan playing out in the kitchen. Kirtans are always wonderful. That just mesmerizes one's heart. And when you have time, you can read scriptures. Let's say you're a working man. While driving to your office, you can always play a CD or a USB which has kirtan in it. You can hear a class. There are abundant ways we can always keep us surrounded ourselves by these sound vibrations, the transcendental sound vibrations. If there is a will, there is a way. And we all are intelligent enough to find those ways. We live in the world of technology where everything is accessible to us 24/7. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. No more questions on YouTube now.
Thank you so much. Our time is also over. This is 7:30 now. All of you would definitely be tired. Probably it's time for your dinner. And sincerely grateful for all of you once again joining us for this Bhagavad Gita program. I hope all of you had been solving the quizzes. I believe, I don't know, I had shared the schedule with our host or the moderator for the program. For those of you who are still around, November 8th, November 7th, not November 7th, prior to that, November 7th, we'll be concluding our Gita Essence program. And November 7th would be the recap of chapter 13 to 18. And November 8th, we'll have the concluding class by His Grace Radhesham Prabhu, where he will also be announcing the winners of this Gita Essence quizzes, and will be also giving out the certificates. So in case if you still have pending quizzes, I would request you all to catch up on it quickly. And the quizzes for each chapters would be published every week. I had already given out the quiz for 9th chapter to be published. I guess it got delayed with the moderators, but maybe by today night or tomorrow morning, you would have that published also. So hang on to it, do solve it in time so that it gets evaluated before we announce the results. With that, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.